Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Melissa RIDGEN. Suspected unmarked graves were found on 2 more former residential school sites in Saskatchewan last week. Ground-penetrating radar showed 54 probable graves at the St. Philip's and Fort Pelly residential schools near Kisa Coast First Nation. That's in east central Saskatchewan. Here's Leanne Sanders with more.
This is now the 5th search to confirm the presence of graves at former residential schools in Canada. And according to Elder Ted Cuazance, the latest reminder of the assimilation and genocide that happened there.
Our chief has recognized that healing is not a political event. The work that has been done within our community, it's not politics. It's a human issue. Assembly of First Nations Chief ROSEANNE Archibald says the graves need to be investigated as crime scenes because there are children who never came home.
They knew about this, what was happening in these institutions. And one of the survivors said, we just weren't believed. And so when we make these recoveries, that's proof. That's long overdue proof that genocide has occurred in Canada.
Archbishop Don BOLEN of the Regina Roman Catholic Diocese was at today's announcement. He's one of 2 Saskatchewan bishops trying to bring the Pope to Canada to apologize, and says he's been reflecting on how the Church can walk in solidarity with survivors for real conciliation.
Reflecting on how the Church can walk in solidarity with you in the pursuit of real conciliation. And we are profoundly sorry for the role that Catholics played in the schools and the abuse that you suffered.
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller says the strength of the knowledge keepers should be recognized as the truth they already knew is being revealed.
And it shouldn't have to be said, but I feel it does to survivors and your families. I believe you. And Canada believes you.
For Treaty Commissioner of Saskatchewan, Mary CULBERTSON, today's announcement is confirmation of the stories she remembers when she was growing up on Kisa Coast First Nation.
You knew places you couldn't go play along where that teacherage used to be. Don't look outside at night because we were always scared of where that playground was and how you'd feel looking at it. Or walking someone home across the road from the teacherage to behind the rink and you'd hear a baby crying in the bush.
Another site will be searched starting this summer at the neighboring Cody First Nation. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Thousands of people came out for Vancouver's annual Valentine's Day March for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The crowd sang songs, they chanted and drummed, and some of them even pulled down a statue of a famous Gastown pioneer. APTN's Tina House was there.
The 31st annual Valentine's Day Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's March took place beginning at Main and Hastings, an area where hundreds have been reported missing or were killed. Family members like Marlene Jack, whose sister Doreen's husband Ronnie, and their 2 young boys were reported missing in 1989 from Prince George, BC. Despite hundreds of tips and ground searches, the case is still open with police, appealing for anyone to come forward with any information.
Pray for our families, pray for our women, to keep them safe.
And with protocol and initial ceremonies complete, the crowd of nearly 5,000 began their somber march, remembering those they've lost and demanding justice. For Carol Martin, who was not only on the organizing committee, but she also knew many of the victims of serial killer Robert Pickton.
It hasn't gotten any better. Anything else has gotten worse. Violence has become a commodity. So is homelessness, and nothing has changed.
And just as the march was approaching the statue of Gassy Jack, this video caught the moment that some people in the crowd had used ropes to topple the statue of Jack Dayton, a man that was famous for opening numerous taverns in the area, later named Gastown. But as Cease Weiss explains, Gassy Jack was also known for another reason.
Gassy Jack is a very well-documented pedophile. It's written in the archives of Vancouver. I just read a poem, and all of the work that was in there mostly came from Vancouver archives. All the information about his wives, his 2 Squamish wives being 12 years old when he married them, and he was over 40 years old, and if that isn't a pedophile, I don't know what is. So we've all had to stomach, for the last 150 years, people worshiping this man because he built a village full of taverns.
And for many that took part in the destruction of the statue, it symbolized taking back their power.
This is a step towards decolonization. This is a step towards reclaiming our spirit and for saying no more stolen sisters, no more pedophiles being glorified. Everybody shut down people like Harvey Weinstein, but we can't shut down Gassy Jack. We've sat here today watching people come up and take pictures like he's some hero. He's not a hero. He's a monster.
The city of Vancouver released a statement saying, while the statue is clearly a symbol of pain, violence, and trauma associated with colonialism and violence against Indigenous women and girls, the actions that removed it in a dangerous way undermines the ongoing work with the Squamish Nation to guide the steps towards reconciliation. Vancouver police are investigating what they call mischief, and so far no one has been arrested. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations also took part in the Valentine's Day March in Vancouver. APTN's Tina House caught up with Chief Archibald to ask what's happening to help the national crisis.
Thousands marched in the streets of downtown Vancouver, wanting answers and justice for the many cases of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. Joining me today is the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, ROSEANNE Archibald. We're still wanting answers and justice. I mean, since the national inquiry wrapped up, what has been done with those recommendations?
In my view, the action plan is behind, obviously, and the government has made reference to the pandemic being the cause of that. I don't particularly accept that as an excuse. We really need to action all of those items, and we have been working to our best ability given their agenda as the government. And so there's work to do, and the AFN does have processes, and looking forward to accelerating those calls for justice.
I mean, blaming the pandemic is one thing, but we do know that because of the pandemic, more and more women are suffering behind closed doors. More and more women are feeling the effects of violence and physical and sexual and so forth. It's not getting any better. I mean, we're continually reporting on women and girls going missing. Now the men as well. So what can the government do today, right now, to make a positive change?
Well, there are some underlying other pandemics, shadow pandemics they're called, and definitely violence against women is one of them. Opioid crisis and overdoses is another. And in terms of what we want the government to do is to help us with our vision. And our vision is women who are loved, cherished, safe and respected and treated with dignity always. How do we get from where we are today to that vision? And that's something I expect the government would want to work with us on.
And we're incredibly proud that our National Chief is a woman, and thank you so very much for your time today. Thank you. Back to you in studio.
Nice to see them together there. Well, to Calgary now, where it wasn't quite as noisy at their version of the 14th annual Valentine's Day Memorial Walk. It was a smaller crowd that marched through the streets holding red silhouettes representing family members. At this event, Stephanie English of the Piikani First Nation shared the story of her daughter, Joey. Parts of Joey's dismembered body were found in various places around the city 6 years ago.
It's a healing journey for myself and my family. It's given me my purpose, why I'm here, to share my story, to help others out there. We're so used to being thrown down and walked all over through society. Today I'm motherless without my daughters. You know, I had to learn how to relive to be a mother again without my daughters.
KRISTA Fox is preparing to walk across Canada to tell Canadians about missing and murdered Indigenous people. She met up with fellow advocates and families on the notorious Highway of Tears. APTN's Lee Wilson has that story.
MMIWG families and advocates welcome KRISTA Fox with drumming and ceremony. She's in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, mother, and grandmother, and is preparing to walk across Canada to raise awareness for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. Earlier this month, she had an emotional journey from Prince George to Terrace, BC, along the Highway of Tears, a notorious name due to the high numbers of Indigenous people who have gone missing there since the 1970s. Fox says she had a powerful experience walking with the family of Francis Brown, who went missing in 2017 near Smithers.
And it was an amazing experience, you know, and we walked and we held arms and then we connected and held hands, and it was just like I felt his pain, you know, he misses his mom so much.
Later this month, on February 18th, Fox's birthday, her official walk will begin from Victoria, BC. Fox plans to carry all of the motions from meeting MMIWG families on her journey. She'll meet more families on the 10-month walk across the country.
And I will take all these thoughts and feelings and pain and everything with me as I go along my journey.
I wanted to build a totem pole along the Highway of Tears to remind people that there's girls and men missing on this highway.
MMIWG advocate Gladys Raddick was in Kitsamkalem to meet Fox on the highway. Raddick completed a walk across Canada, raising awareness in 2008. She was also a key person behind raising the memorial pole on Highway 16. KRISTA Fox hopes that on her journey across Canada, she can meet with policymakers for Indigenous issues and create change together.
This is a genocide. This is our missing and murdered Indigenous women, men, children, and this has to stop.
She says people often ask her what they can do to support MMIWG families. She encourages them to keep showing up.
I always say half of the battle is showing up. So I just would like people to keep showing up. Keep supporting the families in your community. Keep finding out, keep asking questions, keep, you know, sharing on social media, whatever the case may be, because nothing feels better than knowing that somebody cares.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitsamkalem.
We need to take a break, but there's lots of news still ahead, so stay with us. Welcome back. An Innu First Nation on the eastern edge of Quebec is reeling from a COVID-19 outbreak. Unamenchibu recently lost 3 of their elders in the span of 6 days. Here's a story by Shushan Bacon, translated by Amelia Fournier.
Unamenchipu is in mourning. 3 elders have recently died from COVID-19, and their encyclopedic ancestral knowledge has been lost. One of them, Ambroise Apenuen Lalo, wasn't able to get the medical attention he required. According to Alexis Lalo, Apenuen's son, the family worked hard to evacuate their father from the remote flying community as quickly as possible. Apenuen waited 4 days.
Mais la première journée, quand même, il faisait quand même, la température était quand même très bonne, mettons pour faire une évacuation médicale là, par avion, là. Mais sauf qu'ils ont eu de la misère à trouver un appareil pour évacuer le patient. Mais à la fin de journée, c'est là que la température, ça s'est dégradé. Puis la journée d'après, puis par après, il y a eu d'autres cas qui se sont embarqués, d'autres cas de COVID. Puis là, il fallait, mettons que le centre médical, mettons, priorité des patients. Puis l'autre patient était plus, mettons, je pense que son état était encore plus grave.
As a child and young adult, Apenuen lived both the traditional nomadic life as well as the forced settling of the Innus. According to his son, Apenuen was proud of his culture and was an avid caribou hunter.
Nous avons fait vie, mettons, la vie traditionnelle. Oui, nous, Marlene, pour il était capable de faire des canaux. Quand il est bon, nous, Hama, il était capable de faire des raquettes. Nous, les arches, les Wahame, vous pouvez attendre, c'est l'arpon.
Alexis' dad reminded him regularly to share with those in need, even those from the forest, as shown in this documentary, Le Temps d'une chasse. Unfortunately, the chief of Unamenchipu has said that the community struggled to obey public health measures, which led to the outbreak that cost Apenuen his life. Chief Mike McKenzie of Uashat Makmaniutanem is part of the Innu Nation's COVID-19 task force. He adds that the chiefs are beginning to spread the message that populations must learn to live with the virus, and that some hard lessons have been learned.
Mais je pense au niveau de la romaine, je pense qu'il y a un taux de vaccination qui est pas élevé. Fait que je pense, avec les dernières discussions que j'ai avec mon collègue chef, le chef Marc, le monde commence à reprendre la vaccination. Le monde le demande.
But the question remains, how to live with COVID-19 in Indigenous communities while protecting elders. Alexis often thinks about one of the last conversations he had with his father.
Puis là, par contre, on a bien expliqué, si mettons ton cas arrête, veux-tu qu'on te réanime? Ouais, elle nous avait dit oui, je veux être réanimé, je veux encore voir mes petits-enfants, je veux le faire pour mes petits-enfants. C'est ça qu'elle nous l'a dit.
Though Alexis learned so much from his father, he admits having regrets, mainly not taking the time with his father to learn how to make a canoe. He hopes that others in Unamen-Chipou will not have to face similar regrets anytime soon. A story by Shushan Bacon, APTN National News, Wendake, Quebec.
The Southern Chiefs organization in Manitoba is forming their own mobile crisis response team. Among other services, members will provide addiction support through traditional teachings and help for communities experiencing suicide crises. Jerry Daniels is the Grand Chief of the SCO.
This isn't going to solve all the problems, but we are going to be able to help in a crisis situation. We are going to be able to be someone that the chief and the council and the community leadership can depend on to be there to help them through a crisis situation. And that's, I think, what we all want in the interim. But the problem is much larger than a crisis unit can establish. We would love to have, a crisis mental health system in every one of our communities, and that'll always be the goal.
We need to take one more quick break, but we'll be right back with some more news. In Alberta, Nehiyao youth in Wabaska are out in the bush learning to trap. As Tamara Pimentel reports, it's all part of a plan to keep family trap lines where they belong in the family.
Even these big boys.
Seth Auger is a certified junior trapper.
Still learning. Once I have the money, I'll go buy some traps and start chopping some mountains.
As the trapping season comes to an end in Wabaska, Alberta, Auger joins 6 other youth in a camp funded by Alberta Health Services Honoring Life. A weekend full of sledding, setting and checking traps, and harvesting furs, getting these teens out on the land and learning the basics from trapper Bobby Beaver.
And we're trying to get as many youth back on the land, not only for trapping, but to practice our inherent rights. As I'm going like this. And there's so many youth that are lost in their ways right now, and one of the best ways is to connect with the land. For me, that's my happy place.
But to become certified like Auger and Beaver, the youth have to take a course through the province, the Alberta Trappers Education Program. It became mandatory in 2014 to ensure furs are harvested using humane trapping methods. Beaver is an instructor and works with the Treaty 8 Trappers Association, which encourages youth to get involved. He says this camp only gives a rundown of what the 3-day course looks like.
Eventually, if you have enough years experience, I think some of the biologists are pushing 3 years of trapping experience, and then you could take over your family trap line.
A common goal many here hope to accomplish.
If that's something that I do, then I'll be able to probably put my name as the junior on my grandpa's trap line.
Well, right now it's just my musum and my dad, and then it would be me.
So far, 3 have signed up for the program. Alanis Yellowney and Chevy Young are 2 of them.
It's kind of a dying art, let's say, like a lot of things. And being able to have more people to know about it is good for preservation of knowledge.
Kind of keeps the trap line in the family, and if someone wants to try to take it, well, they can't, because there's another generation that's going to come up and take over.
According to the province of Alberta, if an Indigenous-owned trapline is not being used, the government would work with the affiliated nation to find a new owner.
It's all about new traps, new regulations we have to follow. And I totally agree with that because we respect the animals we trap, we respect the land, and the humane ways is the only way to go.
On day 2, teachings from a local elder, lessons on setting lynx snares, and how to properly harvest furs, including Auger's catch of the season.
And have some wolf bait stations out there. That's what I'm going for right now.
Soon, Auger will be able to take over his Musham's trap line and continue sharing his knowledge so others can do the same. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Wabasca.
Here's a horse story of a different color for you now. Indian relay racing is rough and rowdy. It's like chuck wagon racing, but without the chuck wagons. The sport is really taking off out west, and a couple of young entrepreneurs are raising the stakes. Here's our own cowboy, Chris Stewart, with that one.
Here they go! A couple holders on the ground, and we look to the front.
To those who love it, nothing beats the thrill of watching live Indian relay racing. Competitors work as a team, riding a horse to fame and glory. And now the Super Series Indian Relay is launching this spring, with competitors across Turtle Island and the United States. The level of competition will be high. Kimberly Breton is the co-CEO of the league.
So our season opener is May 22nd, 23rd in Leduc at Century Mile Casino. And right now we have 7 confirmed dates with 5 pending. So we're gonna have about 11 sanctioned events, and our championships will be held at Enoch River Cree Resort on September 3rd and 4th.
And it's a huge 50,000 purse for each event. It's one of, if not the highest payouts, with the championships possibly reaching a total purse of even more.
Our goal is our championship weekend in Enoch, September 3rd and 4th. The goal is to have 100,000. And we're working very hard with our partners, our sponsors, and industry. So we're working very hard, Trina and I, to make that $100,000 championship.
The league will include a women's division as well.
We have a lot of women over here in Canada that are horsemen, and they want to do it. So we made it happen, and that's going to be first time in Canada.
TRINA Shirt is another co-organizer, and she says Indian relay racing is gaining momentum quickly as a sport.
This Super Series is like spreading like wildfire right now. It's like, it's crazy. It's like exciting. It's like, oh my God, everybody's like calling us. They want Super Series hosted at their venues.
The league's top finishers will compete in the World Championships in Casper, Wyoming at the end of the season. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Well, that is a wrap on your news weekend. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.